Good evening. Earthquake in Taiwan. Those that was some of the news that we got earlier this week. This evening, is St. Vincent and the Grenadines really living through a golden age? And we look at the war on Gaza. Up late with Sion Marshall begins right now. Good evening and welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining. This evening, we look at a number of topics, a number of issues. We look at the earthquake that just happened in Taiwan. And to discuss that, I have a very special, knowledgeable guest who's going to be calling us from Asia. We look at whether or not what is happening in St. Vincent and the Grenadines within recent times is emblematic of our country experiencing a golden age. And finally, we look at the war in Gaza and where things are at this point. Now, just to say that this evening we should be joined by our audience on Instagram. We should be joined by our audience on Instagram. So there should be individuals viewing on Instagram, Uplate with Sion Marshall, Uplate WSM. So if you are, we welcome you to the program for the first time. Also, let me greet the viewers from Asbot News Network. This network is doing such a tremendous job for this program, and I really appreciate the partnership that I have with the network in promoting this program further than it would be promoted on our own platforms. So thank you very much. Now, I did mention that we would be having someone from Asia, and I think it's important, right? Because somebody reached out to me recently, and we were talking about the program. So let me say this, that invariably, some of these programs will be recorded slightly before they are aired. And that is because of the time difference. So for example, I had James on last week. Well, first of all, let's put it into context. Right now, you watching the program, it's after 9 in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But it's after 2 a.m. Friday morning here where I am in the UK. I could take my phone out and show you the time, but you can take my word for it, right? Last week, because you were still on GMT, it was 4 hours behind, or I was 4 hours ahead, so it was 1 o'clock. It would be impractical for me to ask James to stay up until 1 a.m. to do an interview. So invariably, I would have to record some of these. But as much as possible, I would endeavor to do some live programs so that the live stream is happening immediately and people who are watching can interact with us here. Now, so just that was just some housekeeping. If for example, I wanted to have Richard Cox on, Richard is an hour ahead of me. So at this point, it's 3 a.m. Richard is sleeping. To have him up at 3 a.m. to do an interview would not be very kind to Richard. So sometimes I'm going to have to record the program, and so you may not be able to interact with the guest as you would love to, but that is because of the time difference. All right. Now, this week, as I said, I woke up to messages from individuals in North America and at home about an earthquake in Taiwan. Now you can imagine those individuals were messaging me 10 p.m., after 10 they were up. But for me, it was after 3, I'm asleep. So when I woke up, I was like, hold on. I have a dot in Taiwan. There's an earthquake in Taiwan, and there's no message on my phone about anything. So let me message and find out what's going on. So I messaged, and I got a very casual response from my daughter. I tell you. Now, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines has reached out to officials from the government of Taiwan, and he has expressed solidarity with the government and people of Taiwan. I'm going to play you a clip that is on the official website, where the official social media platforms of the Office of the Prime Minister, where Dr. Gonzalez speaks about him reaching out to officials in the Taiwan government and expressing solidarity. So let's just take a look at this clip.
As a result of the earthquake, the terrible earthquake, we extend condolences to the families of those who have died, and we are hoping that there would be a rescue for all the others who are missing. This morning, I spoke to Her Excellency, the Ambassador of the Republic of China on Taiwan, to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, our dear friend Fiona, and I also had the opportunity to speak to my other very dear friend, Joseph Wu, who is the Foreign Minister of Taiwan. We expressed all our sympathies and solidarity and condolences as appropriate. And the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines decided at Cabinet today to make a contribution of 50,000 US dollars to any efforts for the rebuilding of people's lives and all the structures that have been destroyed as a consequence of this earthquake. We are in solidarity in every material particular.
So I want to thank you again, Mr. Prime Minister, and also to thank all the cabinet members listening to me. That St. Vincent and the Grenadines is the true friend of Taiwan. It is heartfelt.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, my brother Joseph. I love you as always.
Yes, thank you.
Please.
Yes,
Thanks.
Thank you.
So that was Dr. Gonzalez speaking with the Foreign Minister of the Republic of China, Taiwan, Ambassador Joseph Wu, and expressing solidarity with the people of that country who are our dearest or dear friends or staunch ally and our partner in sustainable development. Now, on joining us tonight is an expert in Asian affairs and maybe even an expert in earthquakes. We have a very special guest tonight. Let me say good night to this very special guest. Good morning, Sarah.
Good night. Well, it's morning for you, right? Good
Yes, it
morning,
is.
Daddy.
Yes, Sarah is my daughter, and she is studying in the Republic of China, Taiwan. And she was the reason for my worry. And I guess she was the reason why a number of individuals, as recently as tonight, people, a friend reached out asking, how is Sarah? Is she okay? Sarah, how is Taiwan?
Taiwan is wonderful, actually. It's a really great experience overall so far. I'm enjoying my time.
Okay, now let me just say though that your auntie Gemma was supposed to be on tonight. She chose not to. But you can say good night to your aunties because they're all watching. At least my sisters, I can know for sure. And Tika, they're all watching. So you can big them up because I'm sure they'll be happy to see you. We haven't seen you since 2020. That was when you went, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it's almost 4 years since I last saw my daughter. And so this is how I'm seeing her on on this platform on my program, and we're discussing what is happening. Now, tell us a little bit about what occurred during the earthquake. What exactly were you doing? What did it meet you doing? And how was your response? How did you respond?
Okay. So it was early in the morning, right? It was around minutes to 8. a.m., which is minutes to 8 p.m. in St. Vincent. And I was in my bed. I had just woken up, scrolling through the social media, and I felt a shake. But I wasn't 100% sure because over my 4 years being in Taiwan, we've had multiple earthquakes, very small earthquakes that happen randomly as earthquakes do. And I thought it was in my mind. But then I looked up and my window was shaking, but my window wasn't open. So I was like, okay, so that's not the breeze. So I got up, and when I got up, it you can feel the shake, you can now see the shake. And I stood in my doorpost as I was told when I was younger, but nobody else came out. So I was very concerned. I was like, oh well, I guess this is a regular day. But then I got the news that it was actually a big earthquake, but because of where I'm situated, which is not northern of the island, and the earthquake really hit the east side of the island, but I'm the west, not west. I didn't think it was a big deal, which is why you got the casual response.
Now, I'll say this, and the listeners would get an insight into our relationship, because it is not the first time I've gotten a casual response from you. When China was conducting its drills around Taiwan, again, I remember reaching out to you and you saying to me, Daddy, I'm not sure what's going on over there, but everybody's just going about their business regularly. But we were nervous and concerned about what was happening there. So you and these casual responses need to stop, because your parents were worried about you. Now, you said you felt the earthquake. I know Taiwan has a very sophisticated early warning system.
Mhm.
Was there any alerts in advance that let you know that something may be happening, and how to prepare for this?
Um, Actually, there was a tsunami warning for the second, because it was almost like two separate earthquakes back to back, right? And it was the second one that we got the tsunami warning, which is why I wasn't as frantic about it, because I was like, oh well, we didn't really get the amber alert that it was a serious earthquake, so I was very calm about it. But that was what we got. But as I said, this is not my first earthquake in Taiwan. I've experienced one that was around the same magnitude, and we got the alert. I was out eating, and you heard everyone's phone go off the same time, but we didn't get the alert this time. So there's that. They do alert you generally, but this I think there was something there that didn't connect really and truly. But their system is usually that you would evacuate. I actually got a message from my landlord at the time, and he's like, is everything okay? And I was like, I'm just a little bit shaken up, but he told me what to do. He said, just go to the first floor and stay there until to make sure. But as I said, when I went outside in my hall, no one was moving. Nothing was happening. So I was confused. So I just went back to bed.
You went back, instead of messaging me and telling me you're fine, you went back to bed. Okay. um, the embassy of St. Vincent and the Grenadines to Taiwan has put out a statement saying that all of our students are accounted for, so everybody's safe and so forth. So that's great news. It's currently a break in Taiwan now.
Yes, we currently are on spring break.
Mm. Do you know if any of the educational institutions, specifically your own, I guess you'd be able to speak
Mhm.
about, suffered any damage? Because I know that there was some damage to buildings and so forth. I know that the trains and so on stopped working. So, do you know of any damage maybe to your school that may prevent the reopening next week when you scheduled to go back?
No, I don't know of any. There was no broadcast either, because during and after the earthquake, my school sent out multiple broadcasts to ensure that the students were okay and that we take precautions going forward. So in that broadcast, there was nothing. So I think everything is okay in the town that I'm in.
I'm going to let you go just now, but I can't let you go without having you talk a little bit about your experience as a student in Taiwan, because I know I believe the application process just closed in St. Vincent and the Grenadines for individuals who wanted to apply for the scholarships. But I want you to talk a little bit about your own experience as a foreign student in Taiwan, and possibly even give some insight, some tips, some encouragements to those who would be coming over in September to join you as part of the Vinci community over there in Taiwan. What has that been like for you from the Eastern Caribbean in Asia, in Taiwan?
Um, as I said when I started, I enjoy it overall. Um, it's not as fast paced as I would have imagined. So it's easier for us to get used to because, coming from a little island, you think that it's always speedy. Not necessarily. I also love how dependable the transportation system is when it comes to buses and the MRT, which is the metro station, and they have the train station and all these things. Like that for sure is something that I enjoy a lot about Taiwan. My tip to my fellow Vincentians is be careful with the exchange rate. For us, we'd see it as Vincentian, we'd see it with the EC, and it's $10. One EC is 10 NTD, and it tricks us because it's cheap in EC money, but you're spending NTD, so it tricks you. So that's just my tip. Just be careful. Keep it in mind. Keep it
Why
in
am
mind.
I not surprised it has to do with spending? Because I'm the one feeling it in my bank account, but that's another story. As you leave us, Sarah, because I had to get you early this morning. I know it's early for you. It's just after 9 in the morning. Well, say something in Mandarin now, like
No man, daddy.
I mean, no
No,
man is not Mandarin. That cannot be
no,
Mandarin.
daddy. Yeah,
After almost 4 years, I
yeah.
cannot hear Mandarin from you.
Mhm. You could hear it on a private call.
Okay, ni hao. Okay. All right, Sarah. Thank you so much for
All
joining
right,
us up late, up
bye.
early. Really appreciate having you. And I'm sure my guests appreciated having you. Tika is there, Gemma is there, and so on. And they're all shouting you up, saying they're glad to see you. So, all the best. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
All right, bye bye. That was Sarah, my daughter, over there in Taiwan, doing her studies and just giving us a little bit of her own experience during the recent earthquake there in that country. Now, Gemma, who I wanted to have on, who's on the live, looking on, I remember she telling me her experience. I remember, I believe I might have been in Azerbaijan when she was in Taiwan, in Russia, I believe. Lord, I say Russia. I was in Russia. She was in China. I was in Azerbaijan, I believe. And I remember her roaming the streets for days because a building got damaged and there was just nowhere for her to be. So her experience in on mainland China was not as pleasant as Sarah's experience that she is having currently in the Republic of China, Taiwan. And I'm grateful for that country for all of their generosity towards immigrants and Grenadines. And like Dr. Gonzalez, I send my solidarity. Uh, Ambassador Fan is a good friend of mine. The previous ambassador as well was also a pretty good friend of mine. I get along well with the colleagues there at the embassy, and so my solidarity, my deepest support goes out to the people, the government, the people, our friends over there in Taiwan. All right, when we come back, short break. When we come back, we talk about whether or not St. Vincent and the Grenadines is experiencing a golden age. Don't go away. All right, now we're back. A few weeks ago, my good friend, a good friend of this program, my brother, Richard Barron Cox, wrote an article suggesting that St. Vincent and the Grenadines diplomatically could be experiencing its golden age. And we may never see a period like this ever in the history of St. Vincent and the Grenadines again. Well, I guess, like the poem says that Dr. Gonzalez quotes so often, the future, the present is the past, and the past or future, or and the past or father's mischief. Only the future is ours to desecrate. So I guess I can't really say with any real conviction what the future holds. But let us look at whether or not St. Vincent and the Grenadines is in fact experiencing a golden age. And I want us to focus on St. Vincent and the Grenadines because one of the challenges we have in this political divide is that too often individuals are afraid or are reluctant to speak positively about St. Vincent and the Grenadines or country that we love because we feel that any praise, for want of a better word, would go to a particular individual. And they have an issue, a problem, praising, speaking positively about that individual. But I wanted to focus on St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You know, a few years ago, when I served, well, first of all, I went overseas to study, and our country was relatively unknown. Yes, in the traditional spaces, North America, in the UK, and among certain mainstream uh, locations, they may have heard about St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but we were relatively unknown. Relatively unknown. Now, over the years, our diplomatic engagements, as well as a number of other things have occurred that has improved that situation. I remember when I was in Azerbaijan, most persons never heard of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but quite a few of them heard the song Turn Me On. They knew it, they heard it. But it was never associated with a country, it was associated with an individual. And there are other individuals, you go back to songs like Nookie from James ZP, and even Beckett back in the day as well, whose music have gone places. But again, it was more about those individuals and their music, and not so much about the country that the music and the talent came out of. Now, since then, with our diplomatic engagement, our country has engaged in a number of things, or rather, put it differently, our country has accomplished a number of things that have put our names right to the forefront of global affairs and global diplomacy. When in 2016, Ambassador King became the chair of the Budgetary and Financial Committee of the United Nations, that was a big deal for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. When we became the president of ECOSOC, the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations, which is essentially the second most popular body, if I were to put it that way, in terms of councils. You have the Security Council at the top, then you have the Economic and Social Council that ranks second there. We became president of that council. And again, it was St. Vincent and the Grenadines. If you went to the UN, for example, and you said uh, Louis Straker, many individuals may not know who that is. But if you said ECOSOC president, they would say, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So diplomatically, a number of things have happened that testify in and of themselves of the improved and increased reputation of St. Vincent and the Grenadines globally. We followed up the ECOSOC election with the election to the Security Council, a resounding victory, defeating El Salvador 185-6. And then most recently, we were the pro tempore president of CELAC, again, a small country in the Windward Islands, leading these large countries, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, and so forth. Diplomatically, we seem to be putting things in place that are significantly improving the reputation of our country and putting us out there as a serious player in global affairs. And this is not about an individual. This is about a country that is seen seriously, that is taken seriously. I am not sure how many individuals know this, but when a few years ago, Canada was trying to get elected on the Security Council, something that we had done as a small country, the government of Canada sent an envoy to St. Vincent and the Grenadines to meet with our leaders. I guess they wanted to know, how can you do it? How did you do it? Because Canada had tried before and not succeeded. And even their last attempt, where they spent lots of money, including throwing a massive concert with Celine Dion in the UN, they still were unable to be elected to the Security Council. And individuals who live in Canada and who are following the news may ask the question or may say to themselves, maybe Canada isn't as reputable globally as you want to think. Maybe its reputation and influence isn't as high as they think it is. Now, mind you, do not for 1 second think that I'm saying that St. Vincent and the Grenadines' notoriety, or not notoriety, but our reputation and so forth ranks above Canada or the US or any state. That's not the point I'm making. The point I am making is that we can attest to the improving in our reputation globally as a serious state in global negotiation and global diplomatic affairs. Definitely. Now, that's from the standpoint of the government's work to promote or rather to engage multilaterally as a serious player. But what else is happening? Well, a week ago, we had the soft launch of sandals. And by all accounts, even from the managers of that or the owners of that entity, they are pleased with it. They are happy, they're excited about it. And it comes at a time when, say, the country, having got all of the exposure diplomatically from a government standpoint, is now poised to take advantage of marketing of the country itself from a tourism and from an investment standpoint. Think about it. I said previously that the marketing power of a Fortune 500 company like Sanders, what it brings to our country is something that if we had to do for ourselves, it would mean the reallocation of funds from much needed sectors. The type of ads and marketing that Sanders embarks on, if St. Vincent and the Grenadines, through its tourism authority, Ministry of Tourism, was to do that, it would mean that money that would be used to train nurses, buy medication, improve healthcare, would be diverted to marketing. Money that can be used to train teachers, hire teachers, build schools, improve the conditions, the education system in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, diverted to marketing of the country. Money that critically needed to engage in uh or rather money that we would need to bolster our adaptation initiatives against climate change, building river defenses, building sea defenses, and so forth, building resilient infrastructure like those bridges that we built recently in Georgetown and so forth. monies would have to be diverted from all of these projects into marketing. So that now we have a situation where Sandals, through their marketing of their property, St. Vincent and the Grenadines benefits. And that means, therefore, that other hoteliers, other investors who may have looked at St. Vincent and the Grenadines with a side eye can now look full at St. Vincent and the Grenadines as a place for investment in various sectors because Fortune 500 companies are investing in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This is something that's remarkable. So now the spotlight is now on St. Vincent and the Grenadines for another reason besides our diplomatic exploits and or improved or bolstered reputation in multilateral diplomacy. Now it's for investment and tourism. I saw a clip on TikTok recently, and I sent it to some of my colleagues, some of my mates at university. And they were so impressed. And this was a couple that had visited St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and they were saying just 3 hours from Miami, and they did their short video and they showed the diversity of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. More of that would happen. And you know, one of the remarkable things about what is happening at Sandals, there was a couple from Trinidad and Tobago that had never come to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And they weren't young people. They were mature individuals, maybe in their 50s. And they were coming, or even older. And they were coming to St. Vincent and the Grenadines for the first time as customers of Sandals. And then you hear that airlines are now going to either start flying or increasing their airlift. So American will be doing six flights weekly later on this year. Air Canada has said that they're going to be doing more flights. Virgin is doing 3 flights weekly. And then you hear of 2 other airlines, JetBlue and United, about to begin service to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Clearly, things are opening up. And then you follow on that with something I was exposed to 2 days ago, where the world's biggest, or at least one of the world's biggest YouTubers, did a series in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 7 days stranded on an island. A video that has gotten in excess of almost 70 million views in a few days. Again, putting the spotlight on our country as a destination, tourism destination, ecotourism, adventure tourism. All of this happening at this time. And so what is my encouragement, or where am I going with this? Well, it means that our people need to do our part in getting ourselves ready to take advantage of the golden opportunities of this age. If you're in the service sector, taxi, if you're in the farming sector, agricultural sector, fisheries, wherever you are, you need to explore the possibilities of how you can tap in to what is opening up so that you can benefit from it. To our young people, we just spoke to Sarah, who's in Taiwan, to our young people who are thinking of going to study, now your eyes are open and you can think about the non-traditional areas that can complement what is happening in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Because now it's no longer the boutique hotels. We now have large hotels. Coming on stream soon will be the Holiday Inn and then the Marriott. Even more hotel spaces. So individuals, especially in the technical vocational area, this is your time to prepare yourself for more opportunities. I know that there are a number of bloggers on St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Listen, hone your craft. Let us not focus so much on being consumers, but producers. Produce quality content that can catch the eye of the world. And there is, or rather, there are benefits that can be derived from this. So, Richard might be onto something. We may really be experiencing a golden age of development, a golden age of economic opportunities. And hopefully, with that comes a golden age of enlightenment. The time when there's so much misinformation and we have to sift through, let us also take some time to inform and educate ourselves. You know, platforms like YouTube and TikTok and so forth has so much information, but you have a responsibility to sift through and try to figure out. You have that responsibility. Try to figure out what is truth and what is not. Understand what sources are credible and don't allow yourself to be misled and misinformed. When I said St. Vincent could be experiencing a golden age, one of the things that I must warn against is, like I said earlier in the program, that conflation, that conflating of the country with the personalities that you may not necessarily like. And so sometimes you get the sense that some individuals are afraid to speak positive about our country and instead speak only negatives because that is their only way of undermining an individual or personality that they may not be in favor of. But at the end of the day, that profits nothing because the world still keeps turning and our country keeps moving forward. Despite misinformation and negativity, Sandals is still there. Despite misinformation and the negativity, the Rabica Bridge was built. Despite misinformation and negativity, the Argyle Airport was built, was completed. We were told that planes would never land there by someone who is a trained engineer. And so, as a trained engineer, you would think that he's credible. That if he says there's a situation, then he must be correct. But alas, airlines after airline after airline is landing there. So even in that case, and when you had the Bukuma project, which is now defunct, and you had the discussions with Tandals, again, there were issues raised around this project that were designed to mislead individuals and to create a false sense of panic. But at every turn, when these things happen, we rise. So the Arabica Bridge was built, the airport is built, Sandals has opened. You heard all the talk about Sandals not being open and it not being possible for Sandals to open with the timeline they've given. It happened. And I remember when we were starting the port, again, you had similar issues, misinformation. And I'm not talking about genuine questions that need to be answered because people are allowed to ask questions. And when they do, they must be given answers. And when the experts give you the answer, then naturally you accept the answer of the experts. But sometimes individuals may not be well trained in the field. They read something on the internet or they watch a film on video on YouTube, and that makes them expert. And so they go around misinforming individuals. We have a golden age, and I think we need to understand that it is St. Vincent and the Grenadines that is experiencing this golden age. And ultimately, the beneficiaries of this golden age would be Vincentians, us, our children, and our grandchildren. And so we have a responsibility to unite around Saint Vincent and the Grenadines and make sure that we succeed. We cannot begin to encourage the thought that if if St. Vincent has to lose for me to win, then so be it. No. Because there are some people with that mindset. They would win at all costs, even if it means St. Vincent and the Grenadines losing. We have to get out of that mindset. And we have to avoid anyone with that mindset. Because we understand that ultimately, the beneficiaries of the success of St. Vincent and the Grenadines would be all of us. When we come back, we look at the war in Gaza, and I'll leave you with this.
Country ever in its history to hold this position at the United Nations. During Hurricane SPG did play a leading role to set the next UN Sustainable Development Goals. Come 2020 we will also be the smallest of a country to sit at the table of the UN Security Council. No one knows the size of a man is the size of his brain. The size of his brain, that's the height of his head. Whatever we minds conceive, which I help we can achieve. The more we unite, the more challenges we find. Now we making great strides. Tiny SPG is now the envy of bigger countries. Yes, both regionally and internationally. This tiny state, we punching up every weight. We might be small, yes, but we footprints lie. Hit the horn. You like it? Sing it, sing it, sing it.
And we're back with this, the final segment of tonight's show. We are sitting and looking at what some have referred to as a televised genocide. Now, this is a very tricky topic, a very sensitive topic, because sometimes, or rather, not sometimes, but almost anything now uttered is referred to as anti-Semitic. Any criticism whatsoever is referred to as anti-Semitic. And of course, many of the Christian faith believe that this is God's will, which is interesting for me. Because I grew up as someone of faith, and what is happening in Gaza cannot be something that the God of love I learned about is pleased with. But apparently, to some people of faith, the right that, quote unquote, God has given the state of Israel, which is a country, is one that allows them to ill-treat, commit, well, according to the ICJ, a plausible case of genocide on the Palestinians. Now, if anyone has been following this years ago, and I had the opportunity of studying in Azerbaijan with two Palestinians, which is where my mind was opened to their plight. You would know that they have been subjected to very difficult circumstances for a very long time. And some of the actions of the state of Israel against the Palestinians have been widely criticized and condemned. A few years ago, a journalist in a vest doing a report was shot by a sniper. Now, since the war started after the events of October 7, which many seem to be pointing to as the entry point of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which is unfair and also not honest. But since that time, many things have happened which has have received global condemnation, except of course from the US, their staunchest ally. This includes the killing of over 30,000 civilians, including close to 18,000, 20,000 women and children. I always question why they would disaggregate it like that, because people are people. Is it okay for you to kill men? Why do you say women and children? You say children, fine. But that's another story. So civilians have been killed. Over 30,000 civilians have been killed. A few weeks ago, an aid convoy was going through to Gaza. And you know, these people are starving because they've been deprived of food. Food is being used as a weapon of war. And so when the aid convoy came in, they rushed the aid convoy because they're hungry. And it is alleged that Israeli forces opened fire, killing over 100 and something people. It is alleged that close to 100 journalists have been killed. It is alleged that close to 200 volunteers, medical professionals, and so on, including UN workers, have been killed. And one commentator put it this way, that it is the most journalists and UN individuals that have been killed in any single conflict, and possibly in all conflicts combined. But Israel gets away with it. Well, it got to a head recently because the World Central Kitchen, and Vincentians should remember this, because these good guys were in St. Vincent and the Grenadines for weeks following the eruption of the La Sibera volcano. They set up camp on the tarmac and they fed thousands of Vincentians for weeks, the good guys. Well, that same group, yes, the World Central Kitchen in Gaza, doing the same thing, feeding hungry people. And a few days ago, the Israeli army targeted a convoy of 3 vehicles, killing about 7 of those volunteer workers, including 1 Australian and 2 Brits. And so now you have questions being asked. What is going on? How could this have happened? Clearly marked vehicles. But it has to do with the attitude of individuals towards a people. And I'm reminded of the attitude of white colonial settlers to the natives, and later on to people of African descent, to Africans. And the narrative of who we were and how they considered us was what led and gave the excuse and paved the way for the unspeakable atrocities that were committed against natives and against blacks. A priest in Palestine over the Easter weekend preached a sermon, and it was refreshing to hear someone of faith who This is not Muslim. This is someone of faith who believes in the same God like the Christians who are defending Israel 100%. And his take on what was happening was quite instructive. He was very strong. And I want you to listen to just one short excerpt of the part of the sermon from the Palestinian reverend given on Easter Sunday.
A genocide has been normalized. This is racism at its worst. And the very same political and church leaders who lined up in October, one after the other, to give the green light for this genocide, giving it the cover of self-defense, cannot even bring themselves to condemn the obvious war crimes being committed by Israel. They are good at raising their concern, make statements that they are troubled by the killing of our children. We're sorry that the killing of our children by your weapons actually troubled you. They want to convince us that they actually care. So they raise funds, they are silent during the genocide, and then show up afterwards with charity to say that they care. Can we really accept this? Many countries rushed to suspend their funding of UNRWA based on mere allegations that were not fully proven, yet did nothing with regards to the clear findings of the ICJ. The amount of hypocrisy is incomprehensible, and the level of racism involved for such hypocrisy is appalling. And now some politicians claim that their patience with Israel is ending, and we say nothing can wash the blood from your hands. The UN Security Council resolution was too late. It means nothing. Some acted as if we should congratulate or thank the USA for not vetoing the resolution. I say absolutely not. They are complicit. You cannot undo the past. In fact, the US has just sent another massive missile package to arm Israel. Are they really trying to fool us, claiming that they care or concern, obviously to win back some votes? If the flow of US weapons stopped right now, within 3 days, this would end. Instead, they sent Israel missiles to kill us and then sent fractions of the needed food parcels. This is beyond complicit. This is direct involvement in this genocide.
Very strong words. Very strong words. The point that he was making, one of the points that he made, was the way it was alleged that some members of UNRWA, about 12 of them, were involved in the October 7 event, massacre. Now, mind you, this was something that was highlighted by the head of UNRWA and reported, and the individuals were suspended or fired. But that was something that the Israelis, and I heard there's this guy Levy, who was on TV a lot and so forth. It was like something waving. UNRWA, they're terrorists, they're part of Hamas. Thousands of employees work with UNRWA. 12 were alleged to be a part of it, and they were dealt with by UNRWA. But just on that allegation alone, countries, including Canada, suspended funding immediately from UNRWA. Funding that is needed to feed hungry, starving people in Palestine. But with everything that has been alleged and the evidence being brought forward and the findings of the ICJ that there's a plausible case of genocide, they still send a package of weapons to Israel. As a matter of fact, just recently, the US sent a fresh aid package of weapons to Israel. So, UNRWA, the UN agency, gets funding cut because it is alleged that 12 members out of many thousands were involved in October 7. Funding cut. But countries and the highest court in the world says there's a problem here with what you're doing, it is possibly genocide. But you get more weapons to continue doing what the court says is possibly genocide. You know, nothing would warm my heart more than to see this conflict come to an end, because too many innocent people are dying. Those who are involved in atrocities should be dealt with. Hamas fighters who killed innocent people and used whatever forms of war they did to damage people, they should be dealt with. But also, if a state that is a party to the United Nations conventions, various conventions, turns around and fails in their obligations to uphold those the laws, international law, and the rules of those conventions, they too should be made to feel the consequences of their breaches. If we don't do that, if we do not apply a consistent measure of international law across the board, whether you're big or small, whether you're a friend of the US or not, then international law becomes useless, becomes meaningless, becomes pointless. And countries like St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that is all we have to count on. If not for international law, then any state that is powerful can decide to pick on us and do whatever they want with us, because it's the law of the jungle. Kill or be killed. It's the survival of the fittest. And our 150 square mile country cannot compete, cannot be as fit as countries 50 times our size with economies 100 times larger. We need to ensure that international law is upheld and that people and that countries are able to feel that they can rely on international law, on the equitable, consistent application of international law across the board. Now, what is going to happen regarding Israel after killing and allegedly targeting deliberately those WCK workers? No one knows. But I guess we just have to wait and see. Well, this brings us to the end of our program, and let me thank you so much for joining. Let me thank my daughter Sarah for taking the time off to link up with us, and all those of you who stayed up late to be a part of the program, thank you so much. Until next week, when I'm back with you with another edition, I'm going to leave you with this verse that I played earlier from Little Chris, and I hope you can internalize it and understand that the more we unite, the more challenges we can fight.
On the king, we UN permanent rep is the president of ECOSOC. We the smallest country ever in its history to hold this position at the United Nations. During Hurricane ESPG did play a leading role to set the next UN sustainable development goals. Come 2020 we will also be the smallest of our country to sit at the table of the UN Security Council. No one knows the size of a man is the size of his brain. The size of his brain, that's the height of his head. Whatever we minds conceive, which a help we can achieve. The more we unite, the more challenges we find. Now we making great strides, tiny SPG. Yeah. originally